Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. InsyaAllah, we meet again. So today is 10th of June 2022 for our class ICT 450, Group CS 241 2B, and this is our lab sessions. Okay, so just continue from our last meeting, last class. Okay, so kita go through back to this GCF Learn Free or GCF Global. Okay, so let's select our topics, Microsoft Office to Microsoft Microsoft Access. Okay, and Microsoft Access tutorial 2013. Okay, so just click again here, and we are supposed to be here. Alright, so finish at least until number 9, step number 9, that is sorting and also filtering record. And for today, we continue with running a queries and also a reports. Okay, so designing a simple query, designing multiple table query, okay, and then more query option, creating reports, and maybe up to 14, or maybe if let's say we have time, we continue with 15 until we finish. Okay, right, so are you ready? Semua dah okay? Right, as usual, okay, saya nak you all follow me. Saya akan buat slow and steady. Kita akan cuba buat seminim yang mungkin. Kita cuba supaya you all boleh follow nanti. Dan at the end of the day, nanti kita akan recap balik everything. Okay, so now let's start with number 10, designing a simple query. I think this one kita dah buat dah last week. Okay, kita just recap again lah. Kita akan ulang balik for this one. Okay, just kita tengok pada video dah.
Goodwill Community Foundation, creating opportunities for a better life.
Okay, boleh dengarkan video ni?
One of the most powerful ways of analyzing your data in Access is by creating a query. Running a query is like asking your database a question. A query can retrieve data from a single table or from multiple tables, and it all depends on how complex your question is. In this video, we're just going to focus on making a simple query that uses a single table, and this is sometimes called an advanced filter. Let's suppose our bakery has an upcoming event, and I want to get a list of all of our customers who live nearby so we can send them invitations. A query is going to be able to go into the customers table and find the names and addresses of the nearby customers. To create a query, go to the Create tab, and then click the Query Design command. And then you'll need to select the table or tables that you want to retrieve the data from. We're just using the customers table for now. Click Add, and then you can close this window. When working with queries, there are a couple of different views that we're going to use. If you click on the View drop-down arrow, then you can see that we are in Design View. When we finish the query, we're going to be viewing the results in Datasheet View, and you can use this menu to switch views whenever you want. The Customers table appears as a small window in the Object Relationship pane, which is this area here, and it has a list of all of the fields that are in this table, such as first name, last name, and street address. And I'm going to resize it so I can see all of the fields. What we're going to do is double-click each field that we want to include in the query. We need the customer's name and address, so we'll double-click on the first name, last name, street address, city, state, and zip code. And we're not emailing or calling them, so we don't need those fields. Each field now appears in the area below, which is called the design grid. Below the field names is the table row, which shows which table each field comes from. And this will become more important when we start dealing with multiple tables. And we're going to modify some of these blank cells to refine our query. We want the results to be sorted by last name, so in the sort row we'll click the cell under last name, and a drop-down arrow will appear. You can click it and then choose how you want it to be sorted. Next, we're going to use the criteria row to filter the records so that it's only showing the customers who live nearby. First of all, we want to send invitations to everyone who lives in Raleigh, so we'll type Raleigh in the city column, and since we're looking for an exact match, it will need to be in quotation marks. So far, this query will show all of the customers who live in Raleigh, but none of the customers in other cities. But one of the zip codes in Cary is close to Raleigh, and let's say we'd like to send those customers an invitation as well. To do this, we're going to need to add another criteria under zip code. Instead of using the criteria row, we're going to use the row below it, which is the OR row. We'll type 27513 in quotation marks. So now the query will show customers who are in Raleigh or in zip code 27513. Now the reason why we didn't put them both on the same line is that the customers would then need to meet both criteria. In other words, the customer would need to live in Raleigh and in zip code 27513. In some cases you may want that, but in this example it will not give us the correct results. Now we're finished designing this query, and the final step is to run it. Click the Run command on the Design tab, and the results will instantly appear in Datasheet view, which looks exactly like a table. If you scroll through the results, you can see that each customer lives either in Raleigh or in zip code 27513. If you want to make any changes to the query, you can click the View drop-down arrow and go back to Design view. And just like any object, it's a good idea to save it. I'll call it Nearby Customers. This was just a basic example, and in the next video we're going to talk about how to make a query with multiple tables. You may want to practice this one a few times before you go on to make sure that you're comfortable with the process.
Okay. Okay, so this one is repetition. Kita dah buat last week at the end of the sessions before kita break. So kita just recap again. Kita continue with the query because query is part of the access that is very important. Maksudnya you kena tahu ni query is what? Query ni maksudnya kita nak tanya. Okay, kita nak tanya ataupun kita nak ask a questions. Okay, apa yang kita nak dapat? Kita dah ada data, we have a data in our table, then we need the access to answer our questions. Maksudnya kita kena tanya dia, kita nak maklumat this and this. This is what we call as a query. So query is very important. Jadi kita dah buat dah tables, kita dah buat dah join before this, and then after this kita akan tengok yang the query nanti ni. And then after that nanti kita akan tengok on the report. Okay, so you all boleh gunakan semula Microsoft Access yang kita dah buat minggu lepas, ataupun kalau you all nak download semula pun boleh. Access 2013 sample database. Okay, up to you all lah. So sebab benda ni just a sample saja. Okay, so kita boleh buat yang mana-mana yang kita nak ni. Okay, Microsoft Access, kalau contoh dekat sini dah ada dah sample Access ni. Okay, saya buat number 1 lah kot. Kalau kata you all tak nak nak bezakan dia, Access 2013 sample database. Kalau nak guna yang lama pun boleh, should be okay. Okay, so katalah kita nak guna yang baru, kita dah download because last week kita dah save maybe. Okay, then kita boleh start with the query itulah. Okay, so dekat sini ni ada beberapa query yang dia buat. Okay, so kalau kita tengok, kita dah ada beberapa table. Macam kita dah tengok itu, this is our table yang kita dah download, yang dia dah ada sebagai defaults. Okay, so to create a query, mungkin you all boleh follow saya. Okay, sambil-sambil tadi dah tengok video, kita akan buat sama-sama lah. Okay, so go to the create here, and then pergi dekat query design. Okay, boleh Okay, once kita dah pergi dekat query design, kita akan masuk ke sini ni. Okay, so dia akan show the table. So meaning that kat tepi ni kita ada table ni. So bila nanti for your project nanti, if let's say you all create table tu nanti based on the ERD, table tu akan appear dekat sini. Kalau ada 10, 10. Kalau ada 5, 5 lah table tu akan appear kat sini. So in this case ada berapa? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Ada 8 table yang kita boleh gunakan. So kalau kita tambah another table jadi 9, tambah another table jadi 10. So table ni depends on kita punya sistem or proses. Dia bergantung pada ERD kita. Okey, ada dua cara. Yang pertama, kita boleh double click sahaja table yang kita nak lah. In this example tadi, dia gunakan customers. Okey, sebab kita gunakan single table dulu. After this, kita tengok macam mana nak query multiple table, 2, 3 dan sebagainya. Okey, ada dua cara. Yang pertama boleh click and drag and drop. Klik saja normally, ataupun kadang-kadang dekat sini ada button add ni. Contoh kalau kita nak add kategori, kita add saja, dia akan keluar dekat sini. So kalau kita tak nak, kita boleh yang ini, this one kalau kita tak nak, kita dah boleh close. Yang contoh kalau kita dah ter-add kat sini ni, kita boleh right click and kita boleh remove the table lah. Okay, so for the time being kita nak gunakan single table dahulu. Okay, for this example. Alright, kita maximizekan dia supaya kita boleh nampak all attribute yang ada dekat sini, first name, last name, up to other nodes. Okay, for this example tadi dia nak tengok ada first name. Okay, just double click je. Maknanya kalau kita nak tengok apa attribute yang kita nak query. First name, kita just double click first name, and then kita nak tengok last name, kita double click last name. Contoh, and then kita akan tengok street address. For example, kita nak tengok city, state, and also zip code. Okay, cukup. Yang lain tak nak. So, ada berapa yang kita nak ni? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 out of 8 tadi tu. Maksudnya kita nak, kalau kita nak query, kita tak perlu query semua. Kita boleh query based on our preference. Apa yang kita nak. Okay, so for example tadi, dia bagi. Okay, sebentar Okay, kalau boleh nampak dekat sini, tadi dia nak sortkan by, contoh last name pun boleh, first name pun boleh. Contohlah kalau kata di sini kita sortkan by last name, kita buat sending. Sending maknanya A to Z. Okey, kemudian tadi kalau kita tengok dia tulis street address tadi, kita set as a criteria tadi. Okey, kita put in quotation marks. Because dia kata tadi kalau quotation mark ni maksudnya kita nak dapat exact result. Maknanya kalau kita tulis A, dia akan keluar A saja. Kalau kita tulis ABC, dia akan cari ABC saja. Okey, so dalam kes ni rarely tadi, okey, kita close quotation marks, and dekat sini dia ada another criteria, dia tulis O. Kalau kita tulis sebaris, maknanya dia akan jadi N. Kalau kita tulis sebaris dekat sini, okey, dia akan jadi N. Kalau kita tulis dekat after O ni, dalam baris O ni akan jadi O. Beza kalau N maksud dia kena dua-dua. Dia kena memenuhi syarat dua-dua. Kalau O salah satu dia jumpa, dia akan keluar result. Okay, so dalam kes tadi ni kita put O. Okay, dekat zip code ni kita letak tadi 27513. Kita follow that example tadi ni. Okay, 27513. Jadi once kita dah finish, kita dah settle, apa kita nak buat, kita boleh klik run kat atas ni. So kita akan nampak dia punya output. So kita klik run, dia akan keluar macam ni. Okay, mungkin perkataan rally ni salah eja ke, mungkin dia sebab dia keluar satu je, sepatutnya ada banyak kan. Kalau kita nak tengok balik, kita check balik, betul tak perkataan ni, RALEIGH. Dan juga okay, kalau kita tengok, saya tulis kat mana tadi. Okay, kalau kita nak go back, kita pergi balik dekat data dekat sini, design tadi ni. Okay, kriteria, zip code 2751. Okay, so maknanya apa yang ada dekat sini dia akan base on apa yang keluar lah kat sini. Okay, sekejap cuba buang tadi ni. Okay, 27513. Okay, dah betul dah. Okay, rally. Alright, terus nanti kita double check balik apa dia tulis tadi. Okay, dekat sini query. Oh, dekat city. Dekat city. Saya buat dekat street address. Silap. So maksudnya kita kena check balik. Dekat city tadi betul tak saya buat tadi. Kita klik dekat view. Hilang pula dia. Okay, dekat design. Okay, kalau kata macam ada something wrong, kita buat balik lah. Dia ni kita remove balik lah table ni. Okay, kita buang balik. Kita cuba create semula. Query design. Okay, customer tadi. Close. So maksudnya tak apa. Dia akan bergantung pada data yang ada lah. Kalau kata kita search, dia jumpa yang itu, itulah dia jumpanya pun. Okay. Saya close dulu. Alright, kemudian kita ada city, kemudian kita ada state, and also kita ada zip code. Okay, so tadilah kita buat, semula tengok apa jadi. Sending, ya. So macam disebut tadi, benda ni kita boleh practice. You all boleh play around dengan benda ni. Okay, kita kemudian kriteria tadi, city dia. Okay. Okay, saya punya PC ni something wrong dah ni. Okay, kemudian zip code bawah dia 27513. Okay, kita cuba sekali lagi. Tengok apa jadi. Okay, kita run. Okay, baru nampak. Baru betul. So maksud dia dapat perkataan rally, and dekat sini ni disebabkan oleh zip code dia. 27513. Okay, so kalau kita nak double check balik, kita go to the design view semula. So kita akan buat something like this. Benda-benda ni boleh adjust ikut kesesuaian kita. Okay, setakat ni boleh follow tak? Dia mungkin kalau dia keluar jawapan lain daripada apa yang ditunjuk tu, just double check balik. Betul tak kita letak dekat mana-mana row, dekat tempat yang sepatutnya. So maksud dia you all boleh modify apa-apa sahaja. So it's up to us. Kita nak query apa, kita nak tanya apa. Don't worry, jangan risau. Apa yang kita letak tu kalau dia keluar ke tak keluar data aku, maksud dia akan bergantung, dia akan based on our apa tu information, apa yang kita bagi tu. Jadi kita boleh letak apa-apa je lah. Maknanya kalau kita tengok dalam table customer tadi, dia ada, okay, mungkin kita nak letak selain pada carry tadi tu, apa lagi? Ini banyak lah kan. Mungkin kita nak letak Chapel Hill ke dan sebagainya, letaklah. Nanti dia akan keluar. Okay, contoh kat sini. Saya copy. Saya letak dekat sini. Okay, Chapel Hill. Kita run balik. Okay, pergi dekat design. Kita run semula. Dia akan dapat data yang sepatutnya sajalah. Ini bergantung pada Chapel Hill. Dan yang ini adalah untuk 27513. Maknanya data-data yang berkaitan 27153. Okay, now you can get idea dia. Maksudnya this is what we call as a query from a single table. Okay, kita go to the next one. Okay, so far ada soalan tak nak tanya? Boleh follow tak?
Sir?
Yes.
Saya tanya kalau yang ada macam OR tu kan? Kan dah ada cara relay dengan lepas tu ada OR tambah nombor kan, 27513 kan? Kalau nak tambah lagi kriteria lagi satu, OR lagi satu, macam mana?
Okay, kalau kita nak tambah lagi, maknanya letak dekat tepi OR tu lah. Tadi create query. Mana dia duduk tadi ni, design, database, design view. Okay, maknanya kalau kita nak tambah OR kat mana lagi? Dekat state kat sini. Kita letak kat sini lah. State kat sini. Kalau kata contoh state tadi apa yang ada? So state kita letak NC contohnya. Okay, kita letak dekat NC. Sini kita letak NC. So maksud dia under kriteria OR kat sini ni. Nampak tak? Dia satu baris dengan apa tu? Dengan OR tadi ni. Okay, so kalau kita run balik, dia akan keluar yang ni je lah. NC, Chapel Hill dan juga 27513. So nampak tak sekarang ni rally pun dah keluar dah. Kenapa? Sebab tadi kita select OR tadi. OR based on NC. Tadi asal kalau kita tak ada NC tadi, rally ni tak keluar kan? Perasan tak? So maksud dia kita boleh buat dekat sini. Kita pergi balik kat design, kita boleh letak dekat sini OR. Kalau nak buat N, kita boleh letak dekat sini lah atas ni. Kalau kata Chapel Hill, kita tak nak NC ni dekat O, kita nak letak dekat N, kita letak atas ni. Maksud dia city dia mesti Chapel Hill, state dia mesti NC. Okay, kita tengok ada tak data dia. So kalau ada, adalah. Kalau tak ada, tak adalah. Okay, contoh macam ni ada ni. Ada data. State dia Chapel Hill dan dia punya, city dia Chapel Hill, state dia adalah NC. Sebab kat sini kita gunakan apa tadi? N. So bila N, dia mesti memenuhi kedua-dua syarat ni. Kalau O tadi, kalau kita letak kat O tadi, dia salah satu dia jumpa pun okey. So nanti data dia berbeza. Kalau you perhati betul-betul, check betul-betul, data dia berbeza. Data berbeza antara O dengan N. Okey. So biasa kan, you all dah biasa jumpa perkataan N dengan O ni. Betul tak? Jadi kena bezakan apa beza and, apa beza or. Kalau and, dia mesti memenuhi kedua-dua syarat. Dia mesti ada Chapel Hill, dia mesti ada NC. Tapi dia tidak semestinya 27513. Nampak tak dekat sini? Yang dia perlu penuhi adalah dua ni, Chapel Hill dengan NC, tapi dia punya zip code 27514. Kan? Maksudnya dia masih lagi memenuhi syarat, dan selain daripada 27514, yang 27513 ni lah. Okay? Alright. Clear? Boleh faham tak? Boleh Okay, ada soalan lain tak? So maksudnya you all cuba play around dengan kriteria apa yang ada dekat sini. Tapi macam saya kena ingat, makin banyak kriteria yang kita letak, makin sedikit data yang kita dapat. Maknanya makin spesifik data yang kita nak. Maknanya kalau kita letak satu je, dia akan jadi umum. Kita letak dua pun mungkin jadi umum lagi. Maknanya data yang output nanti mungkin banyak. Tapi once kita put many kriteria, banyak kriteria, jawapan dia makin lama makin sikit. Okay, contoh macam tadi, saya buang yang ini. Saya buang yang ini. NC tadi ni. Kita run balik. Okay, sebab NC tak nampak sangat lah kot. Okay, Chapel Hill. Ataupun mungkin kalau kita tengok balik dekat sini tadi ni. Rally tadi ni kan. So nanti you all boleh nampak beza dia. Okay. So you all boleh play around macam disebut tadi lah. Benda ni, you all boleh main-main. You all boleh cuba masukkan apa yang kita nak, cuba cari balik, jumpa tak apa yang kita nak dan sebagainya. So that's why dia bergantung pada data yang ada lah dekat dalam kita punya table. Okay, so kalau state dekat sini NC, cuba dapat tak? NC. Okay. Ni contoh. Maknanya data dia rally NC. Ataupun kalau rally lagi selain pada NC dia ada apa? Okay, kita tengok. Selain pada NC, kebanyakannya semua NC ni. Jadi dah macam, nampak tak semua NC. Kalau kita letak lain, dia tak jumpa lah kot. For example, kalau kita letak NY. Okay, kita run. Dia tak, okay, dia akan jumpa yang mana NC, dia makin sikit. Nampak tak? Sebab tadi NC tak ada, tak berkaitan. NY tadi tak berkaitan, semua NC. Jadi dia akan cari yang mana yang berkaitan dengan 27513 je. Okay, yang ini dua ni tak memenuhi syarat sebenarnya ni. Sebab tadi dia ada NY. Nampak tak? Perasan tak? Benda-benda ni. Jadi kalau kata you nak buat, you all kena check balik. Bila rally dengan NY memang tak ada berkaitan. Tapi rally dengan 27513 ada. Tapi data tak banyak. Okay, perasan rally dengan 27513 ada, dengan NY tak ada. Tapi ni sebab apa NC ni boleh keluar? Sebab dia fulfill dua syarat ni. Okay, dia fulfill syarat yang ini. 27513. Yang syarat dua ni tak keluar, tapi at least dia nampak 27513 je, dia akan keluar data ni semua ni. Okay, setakat ni ada soalan lain? Boleh faham setakat ni? Clear? So benda ni you all kena, macam saya disebut tadi lah. Maknanya you all kena practice. Nak dapatkan maklumat apa. So you all kena put the criteria tu based on your punya own preference ataupun needs. Okay, soalan lain? Selain pada Ayub tadi. So far okay? Boleh Okay, kita sambung boleh? Alright. Sambil-sambil tu you all buat juga. You all boleh play around. Jangan risau. Tak apa. Kalau dia terdelete ke, dia salah ke, dia kata error ke, tak apa. Nanti boleh delete balik file tu. Kita boleh download semula. File tu ada dekat dalam tu. Okay, kita sambung. Okay, yang ni kita dah settle. Kalau nak dapatkan info dia, boleh check balik dekat maklumat yang ada dekat sini. Saya tak go through detail lah dekat sini. Okay, let's continue. Kita lesson 11, designing a multiple table query. Kita tengok video dulu. Dia ada dua part kat sini. Part 1 dan part 2. Kita tengok dua-dua dululah.
Goodwill Community Foundation, creating opportunities for a better life.
We've already talked about how to create a simple query that only uses one table, but queries that involve more than one table let you ask much more interesting questions to your database. Now, this also takes a little bit more planning than a single table query, and there are 4 steps that you can use to help you design it. The first step is pinpoint exactly what you want to find out. In other words, which question are you trying to answer? In this example, let's say our bakery is sending out coupons to our customers who live outside the city limits to entice them to come back to our bakery. Obviously, we don't want to send them to people who live really far away, we just want to focus on people who live relatively close to Raleigh. And we're also just going to send them to customers who have previously placed orders at our bakery. The customers who meet all three of these requirements will receive coupons. So the question that we're trying to answer is, which customers live in our area, are outside the city limits, and have placed an order at our bakery? The second step is to identify the information that we need. We'll need the customers' names and their contact information. And in order to know whether they've placed an order at our bakery, we'll also need to look at the order ID numbers. The third step is to locate the tables that contain the information that we need. In this case, the customer's names and contact information are stored in the customer's table, and the order ID numbers are stored in the orders table. So that means we need both of these tables in our query. At this point, we have enough information to start creating our query. Go to the Create tab and select Query Design. We're going to add the Customers table and the Orders table. And then close this window. And you can resize these if you need to. Then we're going to double-click on the fields that we need. So we'll add the customer's first name, last name, street address, city, state, zip code, and phone number. And from the orders table, we'll need the ID field. When you have more than one table in a query, they will be joined by a line, and this is called a join. The join will often have an arrow that points to the left or the right, which tells the query which table to look at first. Sometimes you'll need to change the direction to get the results that you want. We're going to double-click on the join to change it. And we want to select the third option, which says Include all records from the orders table. And in the next video, we're going to talk a little more about why we're choosing this option. But basically, this means that it will pull from the orders table first, which ensures that only the customers who have placed an order will be included. When you click OK, you can see that the arrow now goes from right to left. The fourth step is to determine which search criteria you need to use. We're going to be adding criteria under the city and phone number fields. First, we want to exclude all of the customers who are in Raleigh. To do this, we're going to need to use a very specific syntax. So for the city criteria, type not in, and then in parentheses type Raleigh in quotation marks. And you can use this syntax whenever you want to exclude something from the query results. Now we also need some way of limiting the results to just the nearby towns. And in this case, we're going to do this by getting the area code from the phone number field. The 919 area code covers Raleigh and a number of nearby cities and towns, so this should give us a pretty good range. We'll need to use a syntax that looks at the beginning of each phone number. So type like, and in parentheses type quote 919 asterisk end quote. The asterisk means that any phone number can come after the 919 area code. And there are many other syntaxes that you can use, and in the next video we'll look at a few other examples of these. Now in this case we're putting the criteria on the same row because we want the customers to meet both of these criteria. If they just meet one of the criteria, then they're not going to be included in the query results. If we needed them to meet one or the other, then we would put one of these criteria on the next row. This query is finished now, so we can run it to see the results. And you can see that each customer meets both criteria. They are not from Raleigh, and their phone numbers begin with 919. So generally, more complex queries require more planning. But you can make it a lot easier by just following the 4 steps of pinpointing exactly what you want to find out, identifying the information that you need, locating the tables that contain the information, and determining exactly what criteria you need. And in the next video, we're going to look at joins and search criteria in a little bit more detail.
Okay, alright. Kita tengok yang ni dulu, part 1 first. Okay, so apa yang I mention tadi, kita dah ada 2 query. Okay, this one tadi, kalau kata you all nak save tadi, lupa nak sebut. Okey, kalau query yang asal tadi, yang first tadi, you all boleh save. Contoh dia tulis kat situ nearby customer. Okey, bagilah apa-apa nama. Kalau kata you all prefer nak tulis bahasa Melayu pun boleh. Nearby customer. Okey, klik OK. So nanti dia akan nampak kat sini. Once kita nak nak buka balik dia punya query tu, kita boleh nampak dah perkataan nearby customer tadi tu. Okey, yang ini kalau dah settle, kita boleh close. Dia dah ada dekat sini, dia tak hilang dah. Kita double klik, dia boleh buka balik. Okey, kita boleh check balik. Okey, so for the second one, kita nak buat multiple table tadi. Multiple table. Jadi apa yang dia buat, okey, part D kita dah cerita dekat sini tadi, kalau you all perasan ada perkataan like. Okey. Dekat sini kita dah create, alter, insert record kita dah buat. Okey, kat sini ada perkataan like tadi ni. Okey. And or like. Okey, query pun sebenarnya kita dalam proses buat query tadi ni. Ni dua ni at least dah boleh cover dah. Select query, and tadi saya dah cerita or kita punya kriteria, dan after this nanti kita nampak perkataan like tu nanti. Okey, so kita go through this one. Okey, boleh laju sangat ke? Tak ada. Okey, kita boleh follow. Kita create, kita pergi balik dekat query design. Okay, dia kata apa? Follow 4 step tadi ni. Maknanya kita kena tahu apa kita nak. Pinpoint the question tadi. Kita nak soalan tadi tu kita nak apa. Jadi kalau next time, kalau for your project, katakan contoh kita nak dapatkan maklumat pekerja yang paling banyak jual barang dalam masa sebulan. Contoh. So kita tanya. Jadi mungkin kita kata pekerja. Jadi pekerja datang daripada table pekerja. Jual banyak barang. Barang mungkin datang daripada table item. Barang dan kita tengok sebulan. Sebulan tu maksudnya mungkin dia datang daripada table order contohnya. Jadi kita join 3 table tadi ni. So maksudnya kita kena plan. Apa yang kita nak, soalan apa yang kita nak dan apa maklumat ataupun output yang kita nak tadi ni. Okay. So for this example tadi, nanti you double check balik the video tu. Okay. Ada 4 perkara yang diminta. Kemudian kita identify the table, and after that kita set the criteria tadi tu. Okay. Yang pertama, kita nak dia datang daripada table customer. Kita double klik pun boleh. Ataupun klik button add pun boleh. Yang kedua tadi, dia datang daripada table order. Sebab kita nakkan order ID tadi ni. Okay, once kita dah settle, kita close. Okay, automatically disebabkan dia ada relationships antara satu sama lain, dia akan nampak garisan ni lah. Macam dia sebut tadi. This is what we call relationships. Maksud dia ID customer tadi ni akan pergi ke sini. Customer ID yang dalam table order ni akan jadi foreign key. Yang ini akan jadi primary key. Dan kita boleh set. Kita nak dia point arrow tu ke mana. Maksud dia data dia pergi ke A, pergi ke B ke, B pergi ke sini. Pun saya dah cerita dulu. Maksud dia dependency. Ingat lagi tak? Macam mana kita nak setkan dia tu. Siapa depends kepada mana, siapa dan sebagainya. Itu dalam ERD. Okay, contoh tadi dia sebut, macam mana kita nak tukar arrow ni, kita follow example tu. Kita boleh right click. Dekat sini, kita tengok join properties. Okay, right click Saya ulang So, highlightkan mouse ni betul-betul dekat atas ni. Right click. Ada perkataan join properties. Okay, dia select number 3 tadi ni. Dia kata includes all record from order tables and only those record from customer where the join field are equal. So maksud dia semua record yang ada dekat sini kalau kita nak, kita boleh masukkan. Tetapi kalau kata kita yang ini, yang mana yang berkaitan saja. Okay, nanti dia akan explain detail lagi. Okay, kita klik OK. Okay, tadi dia letak first name, last name, street, city, state, zip code dengan phone number kan. Phone number. So maksud dia terpulanglah pada kita. Dan termasuk juga dengan order ID yang ini. Order ID. So order table tadi ni. ID dah datang daripada table order. So kalau kita nampak dekat sini ni table ni, okay, kita boleh tahu dah. Table ni datang daripada customer, ni datang daripada customer, dan yang ID ni datang daripada table order. Okay. So kita dah nampak dah. Okay, apa kriteria yang dia set tadi? Kita pergi dekat city. Dia kata tadi kita tak nak city yang berkaitan dengan rally. Maksud dia selain daripada rally tadi tu. So dia tulis dekat sini not in. So sebenarnya kat sini banyak kriteria yang kita boleh tulis kat sini ni. Not in. Okay, kemudian kita buat in bracket, parenthesis. Okay, kita buat rally macam contoh tadi. Okay, kemudian kita close parenthesis, kita close balik dia punya bracket tu. Not in ni maksud dia bukan. Maknanya not in rally. Maksud dia selain daripada rally. Okay, kemudian kita put tadi, kita letak kriteria pada level yang sama because kita nak gunakan and tadi. Okay, kalau kita letak dekat or, dia salah satu. Okay, kita letak di tempat yang sama. Pergi dekat phone number. Kalau you tengok tadi, dia tulis like. Okay, kat sini like. Okay, so apa kriteria dia? Dia kata like, okay, open, parenthesis, 919. Kalau tanda star ni maksud dia all. Tanda star ni maksud dia. You boleh nampak tak? Kecil sangat ke saya punya ni? Saya cuba besarkan. Boleh nampak tak skrin saya? Okay, kemudian kita close the parenthesis and kita close bracket. Okay. Sekejap saya cuba besarkan. Okay. Okay, tak apa. Kita proceed dulu. Okay. So settle dekat sini, maksud dia kita dah nampak dah. Maknanya you all boleh tulis. Kalau kata you all nampak tanda star tu maksud dia all. Maksud dia selepas 919 tu apapun nombor pun boleh. Yang penting 919 tu dia mesti bermula dengan 919. Tu pentingnya tanda star tu di belakang. Okay, kita cuba. Kalau saya tak buat mistake kat sini, dia akan dapat jawapannya tadi lah. Okay, kita cuba run. So dia akan dapat maklumat yang kita nak tadi. So city tadi ni nampak tak? Semua yang bukan selain daripada rally dan phone number tadi macam dia sebut tadi semua bermula dengan nombor 919. Belakang ni tak kisah. Ni nombor apa pun tak kisah. Sebab tu kita letak tanda star tadi ataupun tanda apa tu? Tanda star tadi, hashtag tadi tu. Okey. Star maksud dia kita buat tanda star. Maksud dia di depan dia mesti bermula dengan 919. Okay, cuba kita tengok customer. Ada tak dia mula dengan ataupun table order. Kita check balik table order. Ataupun table customer tadi lah kot. Because kita tengok dia punya phone number. Okay, phone number dia kebanyakannya semua mula dengan 919 ni. So kalau kita nak try yang lain tak boleh. Nampak tak? Okay. Tapi yang penting, kalau contoh kalau kita nak buat 336 pun mungkin boleh. 336. Jumpa tak kalau kata kita buat 336? So kita boleh setting balik. Semua nombor semula dengan 919. Okay, kalau kata kita set balik tadi kat sini. Okay, query tadi ni. Kita pergi kat design. Apa tadi nombor dia tadi? Okay, kalau kata kita tukar pergi jadi 336. Kita tengok 336. Okay, kalau kita tukar jadi 336. Agak-agak kita jumpa tak data dia? Okay, kita check balik. Design. Kita run. Okay, tak ada data. So maksud dia 336 dia tidak memenuhi kriteria ni. So maksud dia tidak memenuhi kriteria. Bukan selain daripada rally dan nombor bermula dengan 336. So maksud tak ada data. Bila dia kosong maksud dia tak ada data. Selagi dia tak keluar error, maksud dia query kita betul. Cuma kalau dia tulis macam ni, maksud dia ni tak ada data lah ni. Maksud dia tak ada data yang matching dengan kriteria yang kita set tadi ni. 336. So kalau nak balik, kita tukar balik jadi 919. Kita run balik dan kita dapat balik data yang sama. Okay. Alright. Setakat ni ada soalan? Boleh follow tak? Laju sangat ke? Setakat ni ada soalan tak? Kita dah 9.11. Kita cuba habiskan setakat query dululah. Okay, ada soalan? Tak ada? Okay, kita proceed.
Tak ada.
Okay, you all buat tak? Pastikan follow saya. Sebab saya pun buat slow-slow juga ni. Kalau kata confused, double check balik. Okay, kita tengok yang part 2 dulu. Okay, tak apa. Kita slow-slow.
Goodwill Community Foundation, creating opportunities for a better life.
In the last video, we created a query that used 2 tables, and we just wanted our query to include customers who have placed an order at our bakery. Now we're going to talk about why we chose the type of join that we did, and we're also going to look at some examples of search criteria that you can use to narrow down your queries. In this example, we chose a right-to-left join because we wanted the query to pull in the records from the orders table first, and then use the information in those records to retrieve the records from the customers table. To understand how this works, let's look at how these tables are connected. Every time an order is placed, it's connected with a customer. And if someone places multiple orders, then they'll be connected with each of those orders. You'll notice that not all of our customers have placed an order, but all of the orders are connected with a customer, and that's an important thing to keep in mind when we're choosing which type of join to use. Let's look at what would happen if we connected these tables with a left-to-right join. First, Acess retrieves all of the records from the customers table, and then it uses this list to get all of the orders that are connected with a customer. That means the query is going to include all of the customer records, even if they're not connected with an order, and this is not what we want. Instead, we want to use the order records to just pull in the customers who have placed an order. We can do this by choosing a right-to-left join. Now the query will first retrieve all of the records from the orders table, and it will then use that list to find all of the customers who are connected with at least one order. So whenever you're creating a query with multiple tables, you'll need to decide which type of join to use. You can double-click the join to change it, and then choose option 2 for a left-to-right join, or option 3 for a right-to-left join. We are also narrowing down our query by using search criteria in the city and phone number fields. You may remember that search criteria have to be written with a very specific syntax so that Acess can understand them, and they'll often need to include quotation marks and parentheses in order to be correct. So let's look at a few of the different syntaxes that you can use. If you're looking for an exact match, then you can just put your search terms in quotation marks. If you want to exclude something from the results, then you can use not in, and you can even exclude several different things by separating them with commas. If you're looking for terms at the beginning or the end of a field, you'll need to use the like syntax, and you'll notice that each one of these has an asterisk in it. This is known as a wildcard character, which just means that anything can go here. For example, if you're looking for phone numbers that begin with 919, then you'll type 919 asterisk, and that means this query will look for 919 followed by anything. And finally, when you're working with numbers, you can use symbols such as greater than and less than to test the values, and you can also look for numbers that are between two values. So those are some of the most common syntaxes that you can use, and you might not use all of these, but depending on what type of information you have in your database, you can probably find at least 2 or 3 that will be useful to you.
So for this one, it's just an explanation. Tadi saya dah sebut. Okay. Kenapa kita nak gunakan left to right, right to left, dan sebagainya. Tadi dia dah mention lah dalam video ni. So kalau kata macam confused, tak faham, nak ulang balik, nanti boleh tengok video ni lah. Tadi pun saya dah cerita macam mana nak tukar pun. Tadi kita dah nampak dah. So kenapa dia buat arrow ni daripada kiri ke kanan dan kanan ke kiri. Dia dah sebut tadi. Maksud dia nak cari dulu from ID, kemudian daripada ID tadi dia matchkan dengan customer. So cara dia, kita right click, join properties, kita tukarkanlah sama ada nak include number 1, number 2 or number 3. Okay, kalau number 2 tadi maknanya from left to right, maksud dia from customer to order table. Kalau number 3 ni maksud dia from order to customer. Okay. Okay, kalau kata number 1 only include row where the join field from both table are equal. Maksud dia kalau nombor 1 ni dia jumpa sama, baru dia akan buat. Sama, dua sama. Kalau tak, dia tak akan keluar. Okay, so kalau nak tengok tadi like, between, not in, beberapa syntax tu nanti boleh refer balik kepada video number 2 tadi ni. Okay, so dekat sini pun, kalau kita tengok dekat bawah ni, okay, dia dah sebut dah kat sini ni, planning our queries, okay, identify the information we need. Maknanya nanti for your project nanti saya nak benda ni, you all kena come up with your own planning nanti. You all nak come up dengan apa nanti. So you all kena present kat saya. Okay, macam saya sebut, you all boleh put anything. Customer yang paling banyak beli contohnya, employee of the month. Kenapa nak dapat employee of the month? Sebab kita nak tengok siapa yang jual paling banyak contoh. Kemudian produk apa yang paling laris. Jadi kita boleh setkan kita punya question tu. Jadi kita boleh query. You all kena try sendiri. Dan kita identify table mana dia datang pada table. Kalau datang pada satu table, kita guna satu table lah. Kalau datang daripada 2 table, kita guna multiple table, kita guna join tadi ni. Kemudian kita tengok, kita punya kriteria ataupun search query tadi tu. Apa kita nak. Nak dalam negeri ke, nak dalam state yang sama ke, nombor telefon sekian-sekian ke dan sebagainya. Okay, kemudian tadi ada joining tables kat sini. So dia dah explain tadi dalam video. Jadi kalau kata tengok balik dekat ni, insya-Allah boleh faham. Okay, so kita dah buat tadi example ni, kita dah go through. Okay, last kali tadi kita kena save lah tadi ni. Okay, nama dia apa tadi kalau kita nak save tadi ni? Kita boleh letak nama dia sebagai, ada tak dia bagi nama kat sini? Okay, customer who order, okay ni query ni, customer who ordered ordered from nearby town. Kalau kata nak letak lah, so kita kena save kat sini ni. Okay, kita kat sini ni kita okay. Okay, kita boleh save. Query satu tadi ni kita save. Customer yang inilah sebenarnya dah ada dah ni. Customer order saya letak kat sini. Customer outside apa tu? Nearby. Okay, contoh. Okay, contoh lah maknanya you boleh letak lah apa-apa nama. Pastikan you faham lah apa yang you letak tu. Okay, kita dah ada satu dah dekat sini. Alright, settle on that part. Ada apa-apa soalan tak nak tanya setakat ni? Kita move to the next one Okay, kita move to the next one. Kita continue. Alright, more query option. More query option. So maybe by today ni kita buat query saja dulu. So at least kita dah fulfill beberapa perkara kat sini lah. Query sini. So kalau kita dah query kat sini, maknanya kita dah ahead the schedule lah sikit. Okay, kita dah buat benda-benda ni tadi. Create drop semua kita dah buat. Insert record pun kita dah buat. Okay, tak apa. Nanti kita cuba refresh balik. Okay, kita go through this one first.
Goodwill Community Foundation, creating opportunities for a better life.
I'm working on a query that shows us a list of our bakery's customers who live outside the city limits. And there are a couple of things that I'm going to do to make the results easier to read, sorting the results and hiding the fields that we don't need to see. Right now, I'm in Datasheet view, so I'll need to switch to Design view. And there are two ways of doing that. You can either go to the View drop-down arrow and select Design View, or in the bottom right corner, you can click the icon on the far right. In the data grid, there is a sort row which is currently empty. To add a sort, you can just click on the cell for the field that you want to sort, and then click the drop-down arrow to choose a sort option. And now our results will be sorted alphabetically by city. You can also do a multi-level sort by just adding a sort to another field. A multi-level sort will always work from left to right, so this is going to sort first by city, and then within each city it will sort by zip code. If we wanted it to sort by zip code first, then we would have to change the ordering of the columns. And you can do that by clicking at the top of a column and dragging it to the left or the right. So this would sort first by zip code and then by city. But that's not what I want, so I'm just going to leave it where it was. Below the sort row, there is a checkbox for each field, and you can uncheck a box to hide the field in the results. We're using the phone number field to filter our results, but we don't actually need to see the phone numbers, so I'll uncheck this, and I'm also going to hide the ID field. And this is really just a way of making the results easier to read by reducing the amount of information that you have to look at. Now we can run the query again, and you can see that our results are sorted by city, and within each city they're sorted by zip code. And the phone number and ID fields are hidden, so we can just focus on the names and addresses.
For this one, kita just kita ada another query options macam mana kita nak design kita punya query tu. Okey, saya tunjukkan mungkin dan you all boleh try lah sama-sama. Okay, number one, kita boleh sort. Let's say for example tadi kita boleh sort by city, and let's say ascending or descending up to us, tak kisah. And then maybe kita boleh sort by zip code. Okay, macam dia sebut. Bila kita ada lebih daripada sorting, lebih daripada satu sorting, kita sort by city, and then after that kita sort by zip code. dia akan buat from the left to the right. Maksudnya dia akan buat city dulu, dia akan sort city dulu, then pada settle baru dia sort by zip code. Kalau kata kita nak tukar dia punya order, kita boleh change order of this column tadi ni. Contoh dia, kalau kata kita nak, kita boleh alihkan, just kita highlight bagi dia nampak hitam ni. Okay, kita klik dekat atas ni, kita just move. Nampak sini kita akan move before city. Jadi kalau dia move before city, maksudnya dia akan sortkan by zip code first, and then after that by city. Cuma macam dia sebut tadi, tengok atas keperluan kita, macam mana kita nak display the output tadi tu. Kita nak city dulu ke zip code dulu, terpulang pada kita sebenarnya. Okey, katakanlah kita memang nak city dulu, kita ulang balik, kita ubah baliklah ke sini. Okey, so kita akan nampak beza dia nanti. Okey, kita tengok dulu contohnya ni. Kalau katalah dia berbeza, okey, kita run. Dia akan sort by zip code first kat sini. So nampak tak city ni ada H kat sini ni. Sepatutnya C duduk atas kan? Tapi sebab dia sort by zip code, dekat sini dia H dia keluar dulu, baru dia keluar C. Okey, kalau kita terbalikkan, okey, kita ubah balik kedudukan dia ni. Okey, the way how dia display pun berbeza. Kita put here. Okey, kita run balik. So kita akan nampak dekat sini, dia akan sort by city first, C sampai H, and also after that zip code lah 27513 dan and so on. Okay, that's number 1. And then number 2 tadi dia sebut kita boleh uncheck. Katakanlah kita dah filter by phone number, tapi kita tak nak dia display phone number ni, tak perlu. Okay, kita uncheck sini. Order table pun kita tak nak, dia tak nak display. Kita just uncheck. Ni semua ni kalau kita tak nak, kita boleh buang. Terpulang pada kita nak display yang mana. Okay, so katakan kita nak 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 saja. So kita run, dia akan keluar yang very specific sajalah, based on our needs. Okay, first name, last name, street sampai zip code, phone number, and also order ID tadi dah tak nampak dah. Tapi sebenarnya data tu ada, cuma dia tidak display, dia hide saja. Okay, kalau kita tak nak, kalau kita nak dia tu, nanti kita tick baliklah dekat sini. Okay, so maksudnya you all kena play around. Ni dia dah keluar balik dah. Okay, so this is the way how kita nak play around with this data ni tadi, based on the query. Which one kita nak appear as a outcome ataupun output, yang mana kita nak jadikan dia punya final output. Terpulang pada kita. Sebab kita yang setkan benda ni. Okay, setakat ni ada soalan. Pukul 9.25, kita sambung sikit lagi lah. Okay, kita sambung sikit lagi. Ada soalan tak setakat ni? So far okay, boleh follow?
Boleh.
Okay, good. Kita sambung sikit lagi. Kita habiskan yang query ni dulu. Okay, ni dah settle, Okay, ni dia kata creating a total. Okay, kita tengok ini. Creating a total table. Tengok apa ada kat video ni.
Goodwill Community Foundation, creating opportunities for a better life.
We're going to talk about a really neat type of query called a totals query. Up until this point, the queries that we've done have pulled in results from one or more tables and listed them one by one. But a totals query does more than just list the results. It combines them according to their value and then performs a calculation such as sum, average, or count so that you get much more useful information. I'm going to start by opening the menu items ordered query in our bakery database. This query uses several different tables to give us a list of all of the items that have been ordered. If you look down the list, you can see that there's a lot of repetition, and that's because most of these items have been ordered more than once. If we change this to a totals query, then we'll have just one row for each item, and the values in the quantity field will be added up to show us what the total is for each item. First, you'll need to go to Design View, and then click the Totals command. And the design grid now has a new row called the Total row. And right now all of these say Group By, but we're going to change the one in the Quantity field. So click the drop-down arrow, and we're going to select Sum so it will add the values together. And there are some other options such as Average, Minimum, Maximum, Count, and a few more. But in this case we want to use Sum. Now we can run the query, And you can see that there is one row for each product, and the quantity field has changed to sum of quantity, and this gives us the total for each item. That means we can tell at a glance that we've sold 12 Christmas cakes, 9 carrot cakes, and 18 cheesecakes. You may notice that some of these product names appear on more than one row, and that's because they have more than one sales unit. For example, the chocolate chip cookies can be sold by the half dozen, dozen, or as single cookies, and these are really 3 different products, even though they have the same product name. So now that Acess is calculating these totals for us, we're able to get a much better idea of what people are buying from our bakery.
Maksudnya kita boleh dapatkan more information daripada kita punya table tadi. Okay, so maknanya kalau kita nak dapatkan jualan yang terbanyak dan sebagainya, so kita akan based on quantity, kita boleh buat sum macam disebut tadi. Okay, kita tengok contoh. Kita tengok pada table customer, okay, menu item ordered. Menu item ordered, this one. Cari dekat, dia dah ada dekat queries tu. Dia ada menu item ordered. Kita double click. Okay, dia akan keluar macam ni. So kita akan nampak tadi sebab dia berulang. Data ni ada data berulang. Sebab apa? Kenapa dia berulang? Ini sebenarnya adalah bridge. Ini adalah bridge. Sebab bridge ni customer yang sama, dia akan order produk yang sama, dia akan berulang. Jadi kita nak tahu berapa dia punya total. Kita nak tahu berapa dia punya total tadi ni. Jadi kita boleh buat macam tadi tu, kita view design dia tu. So apa yang kita buat kat sini dia dah tukarkan. Cuma kalau kata kita nak tadi, kita boleh tambah. Klik dekat ribbon total tadi ni. Nampak saya klik total, dia akan keluar. Dia akan keluar perkataan group by. So dia akan ada satu lagi row yang bernama total. Dan setiap satu ni kita boleh ubah lah. Sama ada kita nak group by boleh, nak sum boleh, average boleh, mean boleh dan sebagainya. Okay, contoh kalau kata kita buat sum dulu. Kita buat sum. Yang ini tadi memang dia dah link. Okay, kita run. Dan kita akan dapatlah dekat sini sum of. Ni 8. Maksudnya Black Forest tadi dah ada 8 kuantiti yang orang beli. Jadi kalau kita tengok tadi untuk kek sahaja, kan, yang paling banyak orang beli adalah kek yang bernama produk dia adalah cheesecake tadi ni. Beli total dia adalah 18. Jadi kita tahu dah. Kalau kita nak display, kita nak beritahu, okay bos, kek yang paling popular adalah this one lah. Sebab apa? Sebab dia punya total adalah 18 untuk dibeli. Mungkin kita kalau kita letak date kat sini, kita boleh tahu. Per month ke, per year ke, quarter ke, per week ke, terpulang pada kita. Kalau kita ada date kat sini. Okay, so kalau contoh kita ubah. Kita tak nak sum tadi, mungkin kita nak average. Kalau kata dia boleh keluar average, dia akan keluarlah. Okay, kita run. So dia akan dapat average. Jadi kalau ada tanda macam ni, maksud dia ruangan ni tidak mencukupi. Kita boleh drag. Okay, kita boleh drag. Maknanya kalau kita tengok macam ni kan, ada hashtag ni, maksud dia ruang yang disediakan tak cukup untuk dia display. So kita kena drag besar sikit. Jadi kita akan dapat average lah 2, 1.6 dan sebagainya. Kalau kita nak apa lagi selain daripada average, mungkin kita nak min, max, ataupun kita nak count. Okay, kita tengok apa jadi. Okay, so dia akan count 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 dan sebagainya. Okay, so dia akan count maknanya berdasarkan kepada bilangan kek dengan tadi ni. So sini ada 4. Kalau total tadi quantity, sum tadi dia quantity. Mungkin satu orang mungkin dalam satu transaction dia beli 2, dia beli 3. Tapi total kek dengan Black Forest tadi adalah 4 saja. Total. Sum dengan total berbeza. Sum dengan total. Sum dia akan campurkan semua. Total ni adalah bilangan berapa yang ada tu. Okay. So settle. Maknanya terpulanglah pada kita nak apa tadi kat sini. Kita boleh modify. Okay. Yang mana yang kita, kalau kata kita tahu nak guna, kita boleh guna. Yang lain tu mungkin you boleh tengok dekat dia punya helps. Banyak membantu nanti. Nak guna first, last ke dan sebagainya. Okay. Okay. Any question so far? Setakat ni ada soalan? So benda ni you all kena practice. Kalau you all tak buat, dia tak akan dapat. So that's why kita akan practice through kita punya project nanti. So you all kena buat. Tak apalah, slow and steady, buat slow-slow, buat perlahan-lahan, nanti lama-lama you all akan mahir. Okay, ada soalan tak setakat ni? So far okay? Okay, let's continue. Kalau tak ada, more query option, challenge. Okay, kita continue. Okay, dia dah masuk dekat report. Lesson 13, creating report. Ni dah masuk chapter lain lah. Lesson 13. Jadi kalau kita tengok, pada kita punya syllabus. Nanti kita akan buat report kat sini sebenarnya pada minggu yang ke berapa ni, 10-12 nanti. So kita dah ahead of schedule. Jadi yang untuk report ni saya akan buat pada minggu depan lah. So sekarang ni pun 9.30. Yang ni semua kebanyakannya kita dah buat tadi, group by, mean, max, average, joining table, dan ada beberapa lagi nanti dia akan keluar lah. Operator macam campur tolak, bahagi dan sebagainya. Nanti kita akan buat. Kita tengok dulu, habiskan dulu ni. Okey, setakat ni ada apa soalan tak? Untuk report, insyaAllah kita akan buat pada minggu depan lah. So next lesson adalah creating report. So untuk hari ni kita concentrate on queries sahaja. Okey, ada soalan setakat ni? Boleh follow tak? Okay, so you all kena practice balik nanti lepas ataupun habis kelas nanti. Cuba tengok balik video tu, you all kena buat sendiri. Siapa yang tak sempat follow tadi, kena buat balik, kena follow balik example tu, just tengok. Dan you all tukarlah apa-apa you all nak tukar kat situ. As long as dia tak keluar error, should be okay. Tapi mungkin maybe result dia akan berbeza lah based on kriteria yang kita set ataupun apa-apa saja option yang kita set tadi. Okay, soalan? Tak ada? Okay, kalau tak ada, insyaAllah kita akan stop sekarang. Sekarang pun bukan dalam pukul 9.33, 9.35. Just nice. InsyaAllah next week kita akan sambung lagi report. Kalau report boleh habis awal. Okay, kita tengok dekat sini. Kita back to the tutorial. Kita dah settle 1, 2, 3 up to 14. Kita dah sampai dekat 14 kat sini tadi. So next week kita akan sambung report. Kita akan create report sini 13, 14 kita create report, and kita akan masuk kepada 15, 16, 17, 18 ni kalau boleh kita habiskan minggu depan ni. Untuk 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 ni kita cuba habiskan minggu depan. Yang lain tu dah tak ada apa dah ni. Okey, nanti kita boleh start buat projek. Okey, ada apa soalan tak? Ada soalan tak setakat ni? Tak ada Okey, so kalau tak ada, insyaAllah saya akan berhenti setakat ni dulu lah. Nanti kita jumpa lagi pada minggu hadapan. Okay, I will stop presenting. Okay, with that, thank you very much. Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. InsyaAllah kita jumpa lagi. Okay, boleh bersurai.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.